to all those who are listening. My name's Dominique, so officially nice to meet you. And for anybody who's listening for new, I know this is your first time. The Huddle was something that Paul and I started back when COVID first hit in around April. You know, both of us have a deep background working in the basketball industry, but also just being hoop heads. And we were like, we have to find a way to bring the basketball community and larger sports community together. So this was originally a platform where we met on Zoom once a week and we would interview somebody who works within the basketball community. People would join live. It was great. We took a little bit of a hiatus just because I think everybody had some Zoom fatigue and we weren't sure how to keep this moving, but now we've since moved this to a podcast format, and you are going to be one of our first guests for this new season. So we're super excited to have you on the show.
No, thank you for having me. And I would agree that I think community is one of the biggest aspects to maintain during this time and figuring out new ways to do it. And the basketball one is second to none. And so I really appreciate you guys doing this and for having me on.
No, of course. Sure. Yeah, we love the basketball community, and we're excited to dive into all things, digital and social for the NBA and WNBA, because we've got a lot to talk about. And before we get into you, do we think LeBron will buy the dream, guys? I mean, it looks like he's starting. LeBron's the only person that could tweet something and it immediately just happens. Like I remember when the Indians were playing in the World Series and it was opening night for Cleveland and they were getting their rings. LeBron tweeted something like, all of ice cream for Cleveland. And I'm at the Cavs office and we're like, why are all these ice cream trucks like pulling up outside the arena? It's like he tweets something and it just is out there. I'm like, people want to buy into this. I think that would be really cool to see him invest in a team.
Yeah. I mean, why won't he? Why not?
Yeah.
I mean, he's got all the money in the world, right? I mean, why not?
Definitely has the means.
Yeah, he's
right.
got the means. All right, so let's jump in. We obviously have a lot to cover today. First and foremost, you refer to yourself as a basketball storyteller, which we both love. Let's talk about the career journey, but even before that, we always want to ask, and me and Dom obviously know, but for people that don't, why basketball? Why was that your choice, and why do you love it so much?
Yeah, I don't even know if I would call it a choice at this point. I was the child of two Marquette basketball players, and my older brother played basketball as well. I have an older sister who, she didn't love basketball as much, and it's because she was kind of like frail and like I don't know. She was into volleyball, which is a great sport too, but we give her grief for it, and I love her. And I actually got to teach my nephew, her son, basketball this past summer, and so that was really cool. But grew up just outside of Milwaukee, and grew up going to all the Marquette basketball camps, going to all the games, Bucks games, and of course traveling and playing basketball. I'm going to the GLeague bubble in 2 weeks, and so I was like, when's the last time I was there? And I was like, oh, AAU tournament in like the early 2010s. For my older brother, they had nationals there, and I was like, that's crazy to think about, because this season is almost feeling kind of like an AAU tournament, kind of that feel. And so I've just grown up absolutely adoring basketball. I tell people that when I was in classes in like middle school, I would see if I could name all 30 NBA teams on like a sheet of paper, and if I could name like one player from each team. And that's what I would do when I was bored. And I was obsessed with LeBron James, and like it was just like I was infatuated by like the people and the concept of basketball at that high of a level, and just I absolutely loved it. I played through high school. I was only getting D2 or D3 looks. And at this point, I was so infatuated with Marquette too, that I was like, I knew I wanted to do journalism. I knew they had a great program. And I just wanted to like experience the place that meant so much to my family. And so I ended up going there.
Did you apply anywhere else?
That's a good question. My dad made me. And he was like, you have to apply to one other school in the state too. And I was like, well, I'm not applying to Wisconsin. Like, I would never do that. So I applied to like UW La Crosse because he made me. And then I toured Syracuse and the University of Vermont. My grandpa lives like a half hour from Burlington. Actually scratched that, like an hour and a half. He's in upstate New York though. And so I did look at other places, but like, you just know, when you know,
Yep.
And so ended up going, loved it, worked with men's and women's basketball teams, traveled with the women's team my senior year for a couple of road swings, and did everything digital and social. That includes a ton of internships. I think I did 7 by the time I graduated college. I played on the club basketball team. I coached the men's club basketball team. I was in a sorority as well, which I think surprises people sometimes, but I met this girl during the recruitment process when I was a freshman who worked for ESPN Milwaukee, and I was like, I want to do that. I want to join this. Let me be your friend.
Yeah, we had it down here that I think you led the way for internships in a college career. Was it 7 total?
It's just a lot. And this is what's funny too. And I actually had a Zoom call with my old professor and mentor who I talk about all the time. And I credit him as he was the first person to say I would buy stock in Jenny Fischer. And I was like, what? And like first person to really believe in me and like pull me to the side and be like, you have something that you need to share with other people. And I'm, what are you talking about? But oh my gosh, I lost my train of thought. Oh, I was telling him yesterday that I don't even have like 5 or 6 other things I've done on my resume. I have a college basketball podcast that's on my resume. I helped start the Coaches for Action thing in the Big East and ran their social for them over the summer. I don't even think people know that. But again, it's not like I'm embarrassed or it's not that I'm embarrassed or I don't want to talk about it. Dwayne Killings, who is the associate head coach for Marquette men's basketball, called me up and he was like, I heard you do digital and social stuff. Can you help me with this? And I was like, absolutely. Like any way that I can help in that effort. But, and I mean, that's more recent stuff, but there were things like that in college too, that I was like, I didn't even put every internship or everything. Like my first internship is about to fall off my resume. Like once I start adding the more recent stuff, I haven't even added this MBA job. And so I'm like, it's just kind of crazy. And it's not in a bragging way. It's like I'm so fortunate and so lucky that I had those opportunities. And especially now, like I feel bad. I feel awful, frankly, for kids in college who can't get that experience, especially like game day experience or just like getting to, my big thing is keep showing up, right? And I tell people like I would just sit in the Al McGuire Center at Marquette and I would do my homework on like the couches outside of the athletic offices, and then I would go to work in the athletic offices. But the more like I kept showing up and just getting to be around people is how I got to build different relationships. And it's like kids don't always have that anymore. Yeah. Hopefully it will come back sooner rather than later, but I definitely feel fortunate for all of those opportunities and all the events I've gotten to cover and go to and experience. And the big thing is just like contributing to something and learning along the way. So,
yeah,
definitely.
What, I mean, you just mentioned it, so it's a good segue of just the, how you feel bad for college students right now. I mean, we've talked about this with some other guests about the importance of internships in college. And I think I did, it might've been Malcolm that I disagreed with, but I actually said, there's probably, I mean, look, the list can go as long as you want, but there's probably like 15 marquee spots, ESPN, whatever, that probably most of the basketball world can agree with. CAA, like if you get an internship there, your rise is quicker. It just has to, as long as you're not an idiot, as long as you don't mess up, right? If you do a good job, your rise is way quicker. And so I wanted to just get your thoughts on the importance of the internships. And it seems, I mean, I know you probably had fun, but you also worked your ass off in college, and it's like, it's showing, right? I mean, so talk to us about the importance of those and the little things that you did.
Yeah. So, and you mentioned like the big namers. And again, this is what I talked to my mentor about yesterday. He was like, you didn't take the express route. Like you weren't like, okay, I'm just going to work at the NCAA and then get to the NBA. Like he was like, it wasn't like you just magically appeared. And sometimes I think people think that, oh, she had to know someone or like as people assume. I always joke that like people think that because my mom and dad had ties to Marquette and they played basketball that like they gave me an into the basketball world or the Marquette, whatever. And I'm like, my dad is an engineer. My mom was an accountant. Like they don't know the media. They don't know the basketball sphere, like how that all works outside of being a basketball family and everything that entails. But I feel like I'm really proud of the fact that I didn't take the express route, and maybe it's a good thing that it looks that way, right? Like sometimes it's good when your job looks really easy or like it just flows and it's natural. But for me, it was really I mean, I tried to get my foot in the door as early as I possibly could. And another mentor of mine, Brian Anderson, talked to him the other day for like 2 hours about things I could do in the bubble and this and that. And he would even tell me, and this is something I would relay to kids who are struggling to get internships or experience right now. He was like, you don't need an outlet anymore. Like, you are your own channel. You have your own distribution services. You have Twitter, you have Instagram, you have whatever. Learn the tools, learn what you need to do and what you want to do, and then just do it. Like I'll never forget this either. I was doing sideline reporting for the Big East Conference, and I was doing a women's basketball game between Marquette and DePaul. It was being simulcast on NBC Sports Chicago. It was like, and I was like, that's a top 3 market. And at the time I was really like broadcast minded. So I was like, this is a big deal. I really need to lock in on this. I need to do anything and everything I can. And there was one hit that I had towards the end of the broadcast that I didn't feel good about at all. Like, it was a story I had on a player, and I was like, it took me 20 seconds to get the 5-second story out that I wanted. I didn't word it in the way that I had planned. I got nervous. He was like, just videotape yourself doing the hit on your phone and put it out on Twitter. It was like, just because it didn't land on TV or you didn't tell the story right, he's like, you have all the information. This gives you the chance to not have to do it live, and you're repurposing it in a way that more people will probably even.
So you were talking to us about, right before we got disconnected, you were talking to us about, things that you did for the Big East and starting to segue into the NCAA, and you were doing, digital hosting and reporting. So can you tell us a little bit about your role and experience with the NCAA? Because I think it's amazing how you've gone from like one of the biggest basketball entities in the world to another of the biggest basketball entities in the world.
Yeah, and to think that I would even be doing that and working at the NCAA and then the NBA right after, like, it seems like a natural progression, right? College to pros, but I would have never imagined it. And I tell people this story because I think it matters. I was heading into my senior year. It was August, heading into my senior year at Marquette. Someone DM'd me on Twitter and they were like, hey, I've seen all the stuff you've done with the Big East. I went to Xavier, actually, another Big East school. So I've seen what you've done. I think it's really, really great. We have a thing opening. It's a year-long type of program, and I think you would be great for it. Here's the link to apply. And it's like a year-long full-time job. It's called a post-grad program at the NCAA. And I was like, I'm not even thinking about jobs yet, but if someone's saying that would be good for me, I'll check it out. And I looked at it, and I was like, okay, I'll apply to this. I went in for the interviews in November. They flew me out to Indy. In January, I was told I did not get it. They went with the other candidate. And then 2 weeks later, I get a phone call from who would turn out to be my boss. And he said, the original person backed out and we want you to come be on our team. And I found out it was like their intern that they were hiring on. And then she backed out for a different full-time job, and it just kind of worked out. But I tell people, like, I feel like I got called off the bench when I knew I was a starter. And that's, again, not in an ego way, but I was like, I know what I bring to the table, and like, they didn't see it. So, and now what do I do? But I accepted it. And so
was there any pause? Was there, I mean, look, the ego's a real thing. The ego's a very real thing. I took 2 weeks
to get back. Yeah, I took 2 weeks to get back to them because I was like, you guys took 2 weeks to call me. Can I get 2 weeks to think about this?
Yep.
And to be honest, I put it off for like a week. I was like, I was upset about it. Because you get over it, right? I was like, okay, that door's closed. That just means something else is going to open. And you kind of like put it behind you and you start moving on. And then you hear like a little someone's knocking at the door again. And you're like, you? Really? Okay. And so I was upset. But you can't let your ego get to you either. I was like, I was 21 years old at the time. So I'm like, okay, I can't be upset. And I have so much more to learn and so much more to, get better at and grow with. And so I accepted. And then halfway through my senior year, knew that I had a job locked up for after graduation. And then I moved out to Indy. And then when I was at the NCAA, I also tell people this, I was not told that it was going to be an on-camera digital reporting type of job like what I had at the Big East. And at the Big East, I dabbled in other stuff, but that's the most visible, of course. And I was like, that's totally fine, because I just want to tell stories that matter, like in basketball. That can be through graphics, that can be through video. Like it spans so much more than talking into a camera. And then like 3 months into it, they were like, we're doing a women's basketball road trip, and like, we want you to be the face of it. Can you do this? And I was like thrown into in the interview chair, I'll say, the interviewer chair. And it was one of the best experiences I've ever been so lucky to have had. I mean, we traveled around. We started at Syracuse, wound up out near Oregon, then went down to like Texas A&M and Texas and Rice even. And it was just a really, really cool experience where, I mean, I was able to take that directly in my interview for the NBA/doing WNBA job and be like, I will be doing exactly what I did at the NCAA. This is what you need. I can provide that. It's just at a different level of basketball. And so it really helped me. And again, it's all about the experience and like I was given so much freedom there that I was the only person on those channels, and everything that you saw go out was made by me. I wrote the copy for the tweet. I decided when and where it went up. Like it was kind of like a one-woman band. And so that I feel like this feeling of gratitude, because I know that not everyone gets that chance.
Now, was there an opportunity to stay? Or
so
had
with
the NBA
COVID,
already...
Yeah, so with COVID and the way that everything played out, and again, I had a year-long contract, right? And so they were not allowed to do any contract renegotiations or extensions or hire any people on because of COVID. So it kind of, but again, I know so many other people were getting screwed over and certain things were happening, and this one was out of my control. I still talk to my old boss all the time. It's like once every 2 weeks we do our Zoom calls, and he's like, I miss you. And I'm like, I miss you too, because that was like, it was a really good fit. I love college basketball at the heart of it too. I think there's something really cool about 300 some teams all feeding for a national title. So, I mean, it worked out the way it was supposed to again. And I think I've been able to learn and grow and live in a really cool city at that in this new position. So it's worked out the way it should have.
Definitely. And again, I think timing with everything too. I mean, the NCAA has been at the forefront of so many more conversations lately, and wanted to get, you've been so close with it. So what are your thoughts on the new NIL, and how do you really see the NCAA adapting to this change?
Yeah, I remember when I first started working there is when the California bill was signed and things started really gaining traction. We were like, this is going to happen. And I think everyone's internal fear at the national office was like, this is going to crumble. But then like, I felt like I also had the perspective of like, I know what it's like working in college athletics for the past 4 years. I worked in Marquette's athletic department for all 4 years in undergrad. And I was like, I feel like on a personal level, these kids deserve to get whatever they can out of their college experience. And this would only add to it. The NCAA is all about the student athlete experience. And I think the one area that I know the amateurism and all of that plays into it, but you would be hard pressed to argue that this wouldn't better their experience as a student athlete in some way. And it would set them up for life as well. Outside of the intangibles like the learning teamwork and organization and all that, it's all great. But I think this would just give them another opportunity, again, a good buzzword for the NCAA, to really build on their own person and their own branding and who they are. And especially in the way that I think it's pictured, which is, I think is a good distinction. It's not making money off of, I am a Kentucky basketball player, here's how to shoot a free throw necessarily. It's, I'm a Kentucky basketball player, I also play the drums, and here I'll get a sponsorship from Sony to do this commercial or what have you. And so, and I think it'll be bridged eventually, right? Or it will be closer together, those two things. But it's like, especially like I follow Sedona Prince on TikTok. She's from Oregon women's basketball. She's got like hundreds of thousands of followers, and like she just does content about like what she eats in a day as a 6'7" Division I women's basketball player, and like things like that, where I wonder if she ever gets in trouble, because there's a creator fund on TikTok and all that too. And so I'm like, but it's like she wouldn't, I don't believe personally that she deserves to get in any trouble for that kind of a thing, or to be able to just like be your own person and put it out into the world. And then if you're able to monetize it in some way, let them. is my point of view.
Yeah. I think that's where it's all going to come from. I think there's a lot of worry, and I actually do want to play devil's advocate a bit after this, but there's a lot of worry on college staffs right now that like, the kid's going to get called out of practice to go do a spot for a television commercial. Like, that's not what it is. Like, it's going to be, I'm going to post on Instagram for Subway or the local Quiznos or whatever, and I'm going to get $2,000 for it. Or I'm going to say, my name's Paul O'Connor, I play at Duke, and I eat at, but whatever the hell it is. That's where I think it's going to be right away. I think it's going to be all digital, all social, all helping promote via Instagram and Facebook and all that stuff. And then maybe things will, like, in-person things will happen. But, like, we're still in COVID. So, like, nothing in person is really going to happen. So, I think that's a pretty easy one. But I do want to play devil's advocate, too, of, like, and I am pretty adamant. We've been adamant about how, like, the whole system's pretty broken in terms of amateurism, and that's like a farce. Like, if you've ever been in a sport management 101 class, you understand what that all came from and how it's insane that it's 2021 and we're still trying to hide behind amateurism. But, like, do you think, like, college coaches complain about transfers all the time and how that's an epidemic? Like, will this lead to even more me and not team even more? Or is this, hey, no, this is actually long overdue and the pendulum needs to swing this way because it's fair? Like, I don't know.
Well, I think it's a legitimate concern because if you're a coach, right? But this is also where it's interesting too. Like, so I think of, and again, this is why the G League has given me like a whole different perspective as well, because so basically in the off season for the W, they've pulled me to do more G League stuff. Just because they've needed help there. They're about to start their season. They have these new elite prospects that have bypassed college to go this G League route, the Ignite team. So it's Jalen Green, Isaiah Todd, Jonathan Kuminga, all these big elite prospects. And like, I see Isaiah Todd posting about East Bay, and he's doing like an Instagram live with East Bay, just talking about like what kind of clothes he likes, the sneakers he likes. Like, it's very Jalen Green. And these are things that I got to notice when I was also on site. Jalen Green's walking in and he's like putting Converse on. And he's like, yeah, they just sent me a bunch of pairs of shoes. And I'm like, that's cool. And it's like, they're starting to experience how you can make money because, again, they're not in the NCAA, how you can make money off of, what situation you are in. But I also see that people think that these kids are a little big-headed, that they're elite prospects. So it's like,
the world caters to them.
Exactly.
The world caters to them.
Like, they can get whatever they want. Yeah. And I know that not every kid is an elite prospect. And so, like, let's say like a Princeton kid gets some kind of, especially like Ivy League kids, think about how much this could benefit them if they're not getting a scholarship. And so I could see the concern from coaches. I can see how for certain kids, this could be detrimental to how they function. But I think who you are on a basketball court is not always the same as what you do in real life. You could be the best teammate ever and be a super self-centered, outside of it. It all kind of depends. And I think to really it's difficult to put into words. As you can see, I'm kind of struggling, but I feel like we won't know until we try it out and we roll it out and we see what actually happens. And if concerns pop up, I'm sure we can address them.
Absolutely. I was team for this for a while. Funny enough, I started in media relations as well. I worked at Boston College. They had a similar program to what you mentioned with the NCAA, and I did media relations for the men's and women's basketball team, as well as women's volleyball and lacrosse and a couple other Olympic sports. And one thing that I really noticed when I was working there is not everybody, there's definitely, especially working at Boston College, there's a lot of privileged kids that are coming that it's like, yes, they get scholarships, but I'm looking at the volleyball team specifically. Like, volleyball is a sport that out here, a lot of people play. You do have to have some money to play it. So they're fine. But then when I'm traveling with the men's and women's basketball team and I see that they've got to go study and then go to their dinner and then go to shoot around and go do this, it's like, you wouldn't even have a chance to have a job if you tried, and you still do need to make money. And I think, everybody, we're all our own brands right now. I'm even thinking of this for myself this year. Like, how do you create for yourself? And I think it allows them to not just be so like reliant on that system, because there were kids that didn't have the funds to go home for holidays, and then you're stuck on campus, and it's like the food service stuff isn't always open in those times, and it was a struggle for them. So I think, with the rise of social and just all these people, coming to see them, if you're an elite athlete and your highlights are all over ESPN and you're not making $1, there's something, wrong with that. So I was excited to see it, and I'm interested, like you all, to see, how it goes. But I guess for you mentioned the G League, which is something else that came about this last year. Like, if you were a 5-star recruit right now, you could go to any college in the country. Like,
not Marquette. Marquette can't be.
Marquette's off the table. Okay.
Marquette's off the table. Thank you, Paul. Marquette's off the table. Would you go the collegiate route, or would you go to G League? And Paul, I want your answer on this too.
Duke. It's easy. I'm going to Duke.
I would go G League Heartbeat.
Heartbeat G League too. Mm-hmm.
So, and I'll explain why. If you're trying to play professional basketball, this is the best possible route. And also think about this, right? Picture this. It's April of 2020. So COVID has already hit. Basketball season's canceled midway through, no tournament, whatever. Now all of a sudden we're coming back in 2020. Well, yes, 2021, but the season obviously started earlier, this fall-ish. And some guy, DePaul men's basketball, for instance, they didn't play for like the first 3-4 weeks because COVID issues. And so at this point, you're not getting paid, you're not playing basketball, and you have to do school. Now, fast forward to the G League and what's happening in Walnut Creek with the Ignite team and the young prospects. They're getting paid, some of them, $500,000. That's just to play on this team that they're practicing. They have gym, they have all the resources, everything they need. They're getting tested every single day, which not every college team is being tested every single day.
Right.
You also get your sponsorship deals on the side, which NCAA kids can't. You don't have to do school during a stressful time during a pandemic, although some of them do online school. They have a program through Arizona State where they can do online school and it's paid for, which I don't think a lot of people know either for the G League. That's offered for them as well. So they can still get their degree, but you don't have to worry about it necessarily during a pandemic. It's a lifetime thing that they can go back and utilize. And you're promised to have a season. Like they knew that the NBA has the resources to bubble, and they are underneath the umbrella of the NBA. And so you're going to play against the best competition. You're going to be coached by Brian Shaw, who played for the Lakers alongside Kobe and Shaq. You're going to be able to have all of this stuff that not every college kid is getting right now. And again, they're getting paid and they're not having to worry about school in this moment, because quite honestly, I would hate to worry about school on top of playing a collegiate sport in the middle of a pandemic. It just seems like a lot. And so, and I'm all for school. Like I valued my education more than anything. Like I was like the straight A's, always trying to get everything done kind of kid. But I think in this day and age, I think the G League route, if you're an elite prospect, I think that's the key though. It's not going to work for every single kid. If you're an elite prospect, I think it's the best route.
All right, here's why I'm going to do.
Definitely, because let me say something quickly. I got to say the key on the elite thing too, because it's like the biggest thing for me is like, if I'm an elite prospect and I know that people have said the league is where I need to go, I'm not risking any injury either playing in college basketball. Like I'm going right to the top to where I can get noticed, especially now, like the money that you can make as an elite prospect in the G League is a lot better now than what it was before. And I think there's some amazing coaches in the college system. Like, again, you're going to go off on a Duke tangent. I hate Duke. So I think that's why I got a little triggered right there. But it's like, yes, you could play for one of these big programs. Like I always said, if I was like way back in the day, an elite prospect, I would have gone and played for Calipari in Kentucky, because you know that he's just going to get you exactly to where you need to go. And I think, when I start critiquing athletes and their decisions, I think of myself as a creator and what I'm going to do. And it's like, okay, I'm going to take I'm going to go whichever route is going to get me to being that director versus, you know, going and maybe spending 4 years as a PA. So I don't know.
All right. 31 games Duke has on their schedule.
I knew you were going to say this, and you're going to say TV.
Wait, that's only reason one. That's only reason one. 26 times you're on ESPN or ESPN2. Secondly, you can go back, right? Kyrie Irving can go back. He may need to go back, but Kyrie Irving can go back. Everyone can go back to Duke and go be on it. Coach K will hire you. There's a whole ecosystem that right now does not exist in the G League. Now, in 10 years, maybe it does. Maybe they come back and they coach maybe they're not, I don't mean in the G League, but just in this specific example. Yeah. That is why I would go, because the ability to call, and now there's 15 guys, right? Boeheim, K, Self, all those guys are all the same. There's the ability to call and say, hey, I just got cut from my Spain team. I don't know what the hell to do with my life. Where am I going? I want to coach. I want to go to the NBA. I want to be a teacher, whatever it is. You're calling them and they're getting it done for you. It's 100% done. So that is why I still think there's value in that. But listen, you guys, you're both right. I mean, $500,000 versus history. Oh my God.
Well, like your route would work for a walk-on. Like, hey, coach, I just tried playing in Spain. Like, help me figure out where I'm going. If you're an elite prospect, you don't even need the connections or
but what about all the way at the end? 35. They just had a 12-year NBA career. Not that they're going to need them for it, but it's a resource, right? It's not that they can't call Brian Shaw. They can do that, right? But I just think.
They have player development staffs for those specific purposes now. I think that we're seeing like player development is now, but I get where you're coming from. And I guess my question to both of you is like, do we think that this is going to start affecting the level of competition in collegiate sports? Because, you know, before everybody had to go the college route. So you were seeing these big names that we were seeing these 5-star recruits in high school going to these top programs. But like, do we think that we're going to see a fall off of the level of competition in the NCAA if all these elite prospects start just going straight to the G League?
No, I mean, what's the latest with the one and done rule? Because the NBA was supposed to be done with that this year, no?
So I thought so as well. And this is also, I'm glad that you brought it up, because it is an NBA rule that you have to spend a year in college. And I think a lot of people think, oh, the NCAA is so awful for making them stay a year.
And that's an NBA rule. Yeah.
Exactly. But yeah, I think that's supposed to be going away. That's honestly a good thing for me to look up on and to know more about. But
I think it's for the better. Let them go, and if they want to come to college, they go. And the 5 to 10 kids that are always being talked about anyway, that are going to be drafted that next year after a Kentucky year, just go. Mm-hmm. It's totally fine.
Yeah. I'm interested to see if this will affect the eligibility clock that the NCAA has too, because what is it? It's like as soon as you're able to enroll in college, you have like a 5-year clock, I think, whatever it is. And then you can't play. Yep. And then you can't play after that. And so it's like, let's say a guy tries to go to the G League, doesn't like it. Can he go back to college? Like, has that been explored yet? Has it been explored where, I don't know, a kid could play college and then maybe decides to go to the G League? Because the seasons also normally should be around the same time, but could he get plucked? You know what I'm saying?
Maybe.
So it's just, there's possibilities.
Yeah, definitely. It's going to be interesting and fun to watch, but it's always like, this is one of my favorite debates and conversations to have with people, because there's always so many different thoughts.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so let's jump back into, I want to kind of talk about how you got your role at the NBA, and then specifically what you do. Well, it's the NBA, G League, WNBA. So how you got there, and then how it differs from what you do at the NCAA, and then also how it's similar.
Yeah, well, so it was May or June, I think it was the end of May, when my position was up at the NCAA. I remember putting out a thing on Twitter. It was like a thread of everything I had done that year. And I was like, here's the women's basketball road trip. Here's all the Sabrina Ionescu content that I did. Here's the stuff I made for her leaving college basketball, her last game, like everything, getting drafted, like all the stuff that I had been able to do. And I was like, please, anyone, like hit me up with job opportunities, because this was the other thing. I felt like people were starting to jump ship on sports or basketball, and they were like, it's time to get a job outside of it. This isn't the time to be in sports. And I was like, I'm 23 years old. Like, I want to stay in this for the comeback. I don't want to just be around for when everything's crumbling. And so I had a couple people send me this WNBA job. It said digital and social content WNBA. And so right away the light bulb goes on. I'm like, this really could be something for me. And I sent it to my boss at the NCAA who was helping me job hunt. And he was like, I think this would be a really solid position for you. You should apply. And he goes, and we might like know some people at the WNBA through our NCAA women's basketball staff. Like, we'll see if anyone knows anyone. But he didn't really like tell me how that ever netted out. And so I was like, okay, thanks. And I applied. I heard back immediately. They were like, let's set up an interview. Did the interview, didn't hear back for like a month. And I was like, all right, I guess I didn't get it. And then they basically called me back and they were like, we just had to be on a hiring freeze. Can you do another interview? I did like 3 or 4 interviews in a week. Ended up getting the position, and they had me start like 3 weeks later, moved out to New York, packed up my car with everything I had back home in Wisconsin. I had spent like 2 months nannying my nephew in the interim, and then doing some of the coaches for action stuff and things like that. But basically I just kind of got thrown into the season. The W season had already started by the time I started in August. It was just like a week or two in. And basically it was a ton of digital social content publishing. And so I'm posting to all the channels. I'm figuring out what goes where, which is very similar to the NCAA. I would say the biggest difference is, and I told my boss this, I love the on-site connecting with players and people side of basketball. Clearly, I mean, this call is an example, but I was like, I'm not getting as much of that. It could be due to COVID, but I was like, that's the stuff I love. Like, I feel like you get the best content when you are on the ground in person, able to storytell at that level. And then lo and behold, with the G League, like I've gone to California twice and been tested and done all the bells and whistles with that. But it's definitely more corporate than the NCAA. It's a bigger company. It's bigger responsibility, I would say, at the same time, even though it's a different one. Just because you're dealing with adults who are like, for instance, like Sue Bird just turned 40. And so it's like, this is a grown woman who, and for the NCAA, I could reach out to Marquette and be like, do an Instagram takeover and show us a day in the life and show off your shoes and stuff. Well, I guess they weren't allowed to show off their Jordans, but I was like, here's this cool opportunity, do an Instagram takeover. Sue Bird is not interested in doing a WNBA Instagram takeover, perhaps because she has 10 million other things going on and she's a grown woman. So there's differences in that way, but again, I just feel like I'm really lucky to do what I do. Still kind of trying to figure out where I want my long-term career to go. I actually got to talk to Doris Burke, who I've like idolized for years and like probably a decade at this point. What was that?
PC Fryer, baby. Love it.
Yes.
Love Doris. She's a queen.
She's the GOAT, literally the GOAT. And I even like just got to talk to her about career stuff. So I'm very grateful for the journey so far, but I just feel like I still have more to give. I still have more to offer. And I just want to continue to kind of be challenged and again, work in basketball and storytelling.
Definitely. And the league is a great place. I spent a few years there and I wasn't even in a direct storytelling role like you, but just my experience with being with the league has catapulted my storytelling career. In other ways, we'll have to connect offline because I actually did some content work for the G League last year that I'm going to release this week. So awesome. Got to get back out there and create with you guys again.
Yes.
But, you know, you came on to the W, I think at almost the best time because we talked about this earlier, but it was, I feel like the summer of the orange hoodie. That's what I call it, at least in my mind. And just being so close to things on the digital side, like how did you see the W really like growing as you're working on this platform this summer?
Yeah, well, I feel like I also jumped in at a point where like they already had so much momentum and build. Like, yes, I got to be there for the middle part of it, and I wouldn't call it the end, but the end of the season. And so I just felt like I got to help like build on what was already being established. And again, like the orange hoodie stuff, like we're still pushing that stuff out constantly. And like the fact that it's such an influencer type of campaign, I would say, just like, and I'll credit it to Kobe as well. He wore it on the sidelines with Gianna. And I know we're coming up on the anniversary, and I'm sure that picture will resurface, but it's like when someone like that wears the orange hoodie and also backs it up with support for the league and the women, and actually like developing women and girls basketball players into whatever they dream they can be. I think like those are the kind of moments where it's like we're just trying to continue to build off of it. And again, just that gratitude aspect. I just feel grateful that I actually sent my orange hoodie to a friend who really wanted one, and they were sold out of her size on Fanatics. And so I sent her my orange hoodie, and then my boss is going to send me one that he found at the office. But I was like, this is weird that I don't have an orange hoodie right now, and I need it before I go into the bubble. So.
You definitely do. Well, if you come across any orange hoodies, hit up your friends at the Huddle, because I've been trying to get one too, and I'm like, yo, this is crazy, but I love it. And I mean, I think it's awesome, but I still feel that these women aren't getting their flowers, and I see a huge disconnect in how storytelling is done from the male perspective versus the female athlete perspective. So how do you plan to continue to elevate them?
Yeah, well, I think, and people are always like, you know, do you do the same thing that the NBA does? Like, what's the strategy? Like, and I'm like, no, the W is its own league. It has its very distinct branding of social justice and social activism, I think, is like within the fabric, which we've touched on. But I just think that it's such a powerful women's empowerment kind of league that you have so much off the court to play off of their mothers, their sisters, these incredible women who I think like Angel McCaughtry owns an ice cream shop, and like some of them are models. Like they do all these incredible things off the court as well. And so I think the biggest thing for me, and I tell people this, my number one thing in storytelling is doing justice by the person whom I'm storytelling about. And so it's like to be able to have these women be honored for what they're doing really matters to me. And just elevating and amplifying, especially in times like we had the past week, where we're able to, because again, it's a tricky spot from a league perspective when an owner and what's going on there, like you really have to kind of just take a step back. And it's, as an employee, it's also a tough position. But anyways, I just think our job is to continue to support and amplify them first and foremost, and do well by them. And then the rest will follow.
Absolutely.
Okay, so look, I want to spend as much time as possible before this clock runs out on keep showing up. So the last question before that, obviously you're a big Marquette fan. We want to give you your shine to talk about Marquette, and I don't think you realize you're kind of a Duke fan because of Wojo. So ipso facto, you got to root for Duke. But talk to us about Marquette women's basketball, off to an unbelievable start. Are they still 6-1?
I believe so, but that's a great thing for me to know too.
I think they're 6-1 and 3-0 in the Big East. So great start. Men's struggling just a little bit, but what do you think about the season so far for both of them?
Yeah, well, I'll say men's first and foremost, because I've been able to watch more of their games, quite honestly. They just need to string a couple together. Like, I love the way DJ Carton plays. Like, he's kind of like a rim running point guard where like he can literally take it coast to coast, and you know he'll get to the rim and like be able to use his athleticism to get there. But like Dawson Garcia, like he's great as a freshman. He's a little stiff. I think like we need to see him get above the rim actually more. It's just like you have all these great pieces. Justin Lewis will be an NBA player one day. That is also my claim. But I think they just need to put it together. And I hate to like say that because it sounds so stupid, but it's like their problems are kind of all over the board. It's hard to boil it down to one thing. It's like just put together one really good performance and then like keep it going.
Yep.
And the women's team, I just feel like Duffy's doing a great job. She was brand new when I was a senior. After Carolyn Keeger left for Penn State, she brought almost all of her staff. But they actually kept a lot of recruits, and like they kept a lot of current players, and they've been able to really build success. I think she actually won a coaching award through the Big East for like, I think they were picked like 9th out of the 10 teams, and last year they were able to really turn it around. And so I'm just excited to keep watching them play. Selena Lott is someone who could end up in the W as well, and so I'm rooting for her because the only current Marquette women's player that is in the WNBA. She's the first one to make a final roster, and she just re-signed actually on a training camp deal. Natisha Heidemann, teaspoon. She can shoot the lights out. I absolutely love her. I think she's a great basketball player, great person, and just really fun to watch.
Awesome.
That's awesome. Well, I think one of the most important things that we wanted to cover on this is just the work that you're doing in the mental health space and suicide prevention. First and foremost, as somebody who has struggled with mental health, in my own life, I want to thank you for being brave and sharing your story. But Paul and I have followed your journey with Keep Showing Up, and, we're extremely proud of you and moved by it. So we wanted to see if you'd be comfortable, sharing your story with our listeners and why you started that.
Yeah, well, thank you first and foremost for bringing it up, because sometimes I feel like it's even awkward for like people to talk about, and especially with suicide, let alone mental health. And so my life has been affected by suicide. When I was 13, I lost my mom, and in 2016 lost my grandfather to suicide as well. And so it's definitely been around my family, and it's been something that I've cared about. But I think what's important to note is even beyond the way it's affected my life, I've seen it affect other people's lives and affect collegiate athletics. And I mean, it's just a really tough thing that I think statistically you are within one relationship of knowing someone who has died by suicide. And so it's something that I hate to say it's inevitable at this point, because I hope one day we will see a world without suicide, because again, it's 100% preventable. But I basically started this back in September, which is Suicide Prevention Awareness Month. I just wanted to do something more. I'm not someone who ever likes asking people for money or donations, even if it's for a really worthy cause. It's just not my vibe. And I was like, I want people to get something more out of it. And I had made the t-shirt Keep Showing Up for a friend about a year prior. And then people had asked, where'd you get that shirt? Because I also made one for myself. And then I was like, I could put these two things together. And I know t-shirts, I know simple words like Keep Showing Up aren't going to fix the problem. They're not going to save the world. They're not going to do everything. But I think it's a really good start for the conversation, for being able to be open and talk about it. Like when people ask me, like, what does that mean? Like when they see the shirt, it just means a lot that I can be like, yeah, my life has been affected by this, and this is why it matters. And I try to keep showing up every day, and I hope you do too. And so it kind of blew up. Kevin Love has a shirt at this point. I shipped him it last week. Juju Smith-Schuster gave the $1,000 donation, which was the biggest one. And then Ninja, the gamer, and his wife donated $2,000. And I started getting like big donations. And I was so used to, because the shirts, I think it's $10 from every shirt, which is $15 goes to American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. That's why the shirts were also designed so simply and everything, because that meant more money could go to the charity and I wouldn't have to charge people more, what have you. And so at this point, it's over $27,000 raised. Awesome. I believe over 2,000 shirts have been printed and shipped out to people. It's been really crazy. And I mean, what I think means even more is the fact that people are really talking about it during a really difficult time. People are isolated more than ever before. People are finding it hard to talk to others and really let them know, like, I'm still not doing okay. Because it's one thing to say I'm not okay, but then to be like, I'm still not doing okay, I feel like is twice as hard. And so It's just hopefully provided some light and a way for people to have a little bit of hope. And I think what means even more is that people have reached out to me and they've messaged me and said like, hey, I have a connection. Or like a couple days ago, a woman was like, I work at a hospital. I know people affected by this. I want to buy 10 shirts. Can you please reopen the link? And like things like that, where I can hopefully just like provide a little bit of good, a little bit of grace. That's what's meant the most.
I was going to say, it was so fun to see you tweet every couple of days. Holy shit, we're at 15K. Oh,
Kira thought it was annoying too. I was like,
it was so inspiring. I mean, Paul and I talked about it. And again, definitely if the link's still open, want to support it. However you need help, it's something that's so important. And I think we still need to break the stigma of it. We need to be talking about mental health in our circles. We need to be really, truly asking our friends if they're okay. And it's stuff like what you're doing that's going to break that stigma and help others. So again, thank you for doing that. And I wish, we had more time to just be talking about it, but know that both Paul and I are big champions of you and what you've got going on, whether it's your career directly or with Keep Showing Up. We're both avid supporters, and whatever we can do to help you we're there for you and we appreciate you coming on our show.
I was going to say, is there anywhere we can sit, like, where can everybody find you? Twitter, Instagram, where can they keep supporting?
Yeah, so Twitter, I'm Jenny Lynn Fish, JennyLynnFisch. It's the same on Instagram. More active on Twitter, quite honestly, and that's my favorite platform. But the link is, I just reopened it. I think it closes at midnight because I have to order in bulk. Otherwise, the shirt order doesn't go through. It keeps it cheap again. So I can get you guys the link and if you would need it. And
yes,
yeah, I think Twitter's the best way to find me for others listening.
Awesome.
Well, Jenny,
thank you guys so much.
Yeah, this was awesome, and we appreciate it. I'm sure we'll have you on again when Marquette wins the Big East, and you'll come on and, and have a good time.
This is right. No, I appreciate you guys. Thank you for all that you're doing and for asking me to come on.
Yep, of course.
We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Jenny.
Sounds good.